You represent the idea of workplace learning, a topic that has been on the agenda for many years now. What are currently the major discussions around workplace learning?
Well, I call it modern workplace learning because what I'm trying to differentiate it from is the fact that everything's all about training in the classroom or e-learning. In other words, creating things for people to do and make sure they do it. My idea of modern workplace learning is that we see learning as a much broader activity, that we learn in so many different ways inside and outside the organisation, for ourselves and of course through things which are done for us. And I think learning and development's role now is to actually more to facilitate and enable these new ways of learning rather than just create, deliver and manage the old training ways. So that's what the new things we're talking about, how we can help people become independent learners, continuous learners, and how we can help managers help people get the most out of their jobs and learn from what they're doing in the workplace. So these are the big new ideas and areas which people really need a lot of help with.
When companies introduce workplace learning, where do they encounter the most difficulties?
Well, I was just having this conversation earlier actually, because they have a very traditional culture, which is everything is very hierarchical and everything is very controlled and top-down driven. Whereas for me, modern workplace learning is very much a bottom-up, self-organized, self-managed, self-facilitated, autonomous type of learning, and therefore there is a bit of a clash between them. A lot of managers do understand we need to change things and do things differently. But there's still a lot of old organisations that are finding it very difficult to shift their mindset, not only in the way work is organised nowadays, but the way learning and development happens in organisations. So they're the big questions at the moment.
Where are the biggest traps for the individual learner, in your opinion?
The biggest traps? Seeing learning and development as an important aspect of their future. In my presentation this morning, I showed how everybody needs to be continuously learning to keep up to date with the speed of work and the speed of knowledge, and the fact that they're probably not necessarily going to stay in their job for a very long time and they need to think about their future. And so they tend to think it's unimportant, that what they need to learn will be done to them. But the big trap is allowing that to happen, because organisations don't really need to train you to do another job. They train you to do your job now. So everybody needs to be aware that they need to be continuously learning so that they can move forward. And that, of course, is another conflict. Organisations often want just to train people for the organisation and the jobs and don't want to see the bigger picture. But in my opinion, the more they think about the future and supporting their employees for the future, it's a win-win for everybody.
Each year you ask learning professionals for their favorite tools for learning and publish your top 100 tools list. Which tools are on the top of the list and therefore the most interesting?
Well, actually it hasn't changed very much in the last few years. The top of the list this year was YouTube. Previous years it's been Twitter, but that really goes to show that people are using these tools which are not traditionally seen as training tools for their own learning, and more importantly for their continuous daily learning. They are frequently going on YouTube to find videos, and they're constantly interacting with their professional networks on Twitter and LinkedIn. So these are really the key tools for them. Some people realise they're learning every day. Not everybody realises these are learning tools, but it's interesting that the top tools are really non-traditional training tools, and they always have been, actually, funnily enough. But I think it's organisations beginning to realise that this is the future.
And what do the results of your survey mean for the companies? How should they react to them?
Well, I think the survey is a tool survey, but actually it shows user behaviour, learning behaviour, and it shows that individuals are learning both from training and classroom training, but they don't see that as the most important way of learning. They learn from web courses that they take themselves, but they're also learning, as I said earlier, more regularly from content that's coming to them in a daily way or through their professional networks, and they're also learning from their daily work. So the companies need to recognise that the modern professional learns in all these many different ways, and so the future is actually supporting all these ways rather than just focusing on the training in the future.
Yes, learning is becoming more individual, more immediate, more self-organized. Is the corporate world prepared for this?
Some organisations, luckily the organisations I work for recognise this and want to move forward, and I help them. Not everybody does, for sure. This is still something that is still a bit of a problem for them. They still want to do things in very traditional top-down ways, as I said earlier. But there are also managers and teams who realise they need to change things. So I think we're seeing lots of pockets of change happening, perhaps not necessarily organisational strategy to do it, but it is beginning to happen. Individuals are certainly doing much more for themselves. So managers are recognising they need to do things differently, and eventually maybe some of the senior managers will start to realise this needs to be their future strategy.
What about the future prospects for management trainers? What happened to professional instructors when learning gets more and more self-directed?
Well, I think there's always going to be a need for some training. That's not going to disappear. But I think the role will probably become much more facilitators and enablers, guides to where people can find the right things. They'll be supporting much more personalised approaches to learning, much more geared to where individuals need to find out more things, rather than providing, say, one-size-fits-all training programs. So again, that's a very difficult problem because many trainers don't want to take on those roles. But where they do, I think they can have a really good impact in the organisation because they can really help to provide a very personalised service to their people.
And what about workshops? Do they have future as a format for learning?
Yeah, as long as they're very collaborative and interactive and they focus on helping people apply what they've learned rather than just broadcasting knowledge to people, they do have a part to play. And sometimes people do want to come out of their work to spend some time, perhaps brainstorming a problem or discussing something or applying something they've learned. So I think they're going to be around, but they're not going to be the full future. They're going to be part of the future.